And action. What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be jumping into a topic that I've seen in the comment section on our videos and other videos all over social media, the topic of butt wink. So butt winking in the squat is something that you start to kind of see a lot of with newer lifters or lifters that are going excessively low in their squats. And what that is, I'll demonstrate here, is when your lumbar spine flexes underneath your body, right? So it kind of looks like your butt kind of looks like a duck, right? So the idea of that is that that's lumbar flexion. So that's your tailbone kind of tucking underneath your body. It's not a bad thing in normal everyday life. If I were to just squat down to the floor in this position here, as you would see, my tailbone kind of tucks underneath. That's normal, right? Having butt wink is normal unless you're gonna load it. So the idea is your hips have a certain range of motion, and everybody's hips are a little bit different. Some people have more shallow hips, some people have deeper hips, and there's a point where your femur runs into your pelvis. It's about 120 degrees, and that's when that pelvis actually dips underneath and rotates in. The problem happens when we start adding external load to that, right? When we start loading our bodies and our spines in that position, that's when we can run into issues of disc herniations or bulges or just lower back pain in general. So the idea is to understand why that happens in the first place and why it happens at different levels, varying with various weights, with various types of squats. The idea is that we're going to determine the key factors that can help you get more depth and greater range of motion on your squats before that butt wink actually starts to happen. So first and foremost, we need to start with the feet. And Jacob has no idea this is happening right now. I'm taking my shoes off. So this is like an OnlyFans page, right? This is how that works, this foot stuff. So when we're talking about a squat, what we need to realize is that it all starts with the foot, right? So in a normal squat, if you just grab the bar and sink down, it's not a very active foot, right? So when I say active foot, I mean engaged. All we want to focus in on is what our foot is doing in relation to the rest of our body. So if we're not focusing in on our feet, a lot of times you'll see people start to get that flat foot, the knees start to cave in, the ankles start to roll in. That's no good. What happens when we squat is that those knees can start to cave in, and that, again, pulls that pelvis underneath. So what we really need to focus in on is we need to focus on having an active foot. How I like to describe it, how I've described it in videos in the past and at the Train Your Ass Off, think about digging your feet into the sand, right? If you've been to the beach, if you've been into any place with sand or dirt or whatever, there's a point where you can kind of dig those feet into the ground without moving them. All we're trying to do is really press those feet flat into the ground, thinking about those 3 points of contact. Think about the knuckle of your big toe, the knuckle of your little toe, and your heel. And what you do is if you focus on pressing those points in, you're going to notice that the arch of your foot starts to actually pop up a little bit. And more importantly than that is if you're getting an active foot and driving that foot into the ground, you're getting more activation out of those hips, out of those glutes, and out of your torso, right? So the idea is you want to start generating force from the ground up. A couple things that you actually may run into if you're not getting that foot activation is that your ankles are tight. And all you do, very simple, stretch out those calves, right? Tight calves can really start to put a damper on your ability to maintain a good position and allowing that shin bone to move forward enough for your hips to kind of open up and for you to get into a good squat position. So the first thing we went over is that active foot. The second, you may have to stretch out that calf. Very simple, very straightforward. But the real meat and potatoes of how to address a butt wink in your competitive squat for powerlifting or strongman, whatever you're doing, is to focus in on the hips. So we're actually gonna go over to the bench right now. I'll keep my shoes off so you guys can pay extra. And what we'll do is start kind of focusing in on the parts of your hips that you're supposed to be focusing in on in order to get the most out of your squat. So a lot of the times we're sitting around all day, and I'll demonstrate here. If you're sitting at a desk, your hips are kind of in this flex position, you're kind of rounded over, and we start to kind of adopt that shape. We start to adopt those positions, and our body gets used to being in those positions. So if I'm seated all day and I go to stand up, what's going to happen is I'm not going to be able to fully extend through the hips because my hip flexors are so tight, right? So what we want to focus in on, very simple stretch, I'm going to show you without the pad because I'm a real man here, is a simple couch stretch, right? This helps loosen up the quads, helps loosen up the hip flexors, and helps to kind of focus in on making sure that you get out of those positions that you may have been in all day. Those seated positions, you sit in a car all day, everything kind of stiffens up. So I'll just hang out here, and if you notice, my lower back, I'm not arching really, really hard. I'm trying to maintain a good position with the rib cage and the pelvis. If you focus in on that really good position, which is essentially where you want to be for a squat, you'll notice that you start to really feel a big stretch on the hip flexors, start to really feel a big stretch on those quads. And those are two things and two positions that if they're really, really tight or hyperactive, you'll find that they start to really negatively impact the depth of your squat and could contribute to your butt wink. So besides the quads, one of the biggest things, and if you saw our video on the secrets of squatting more weight, is we talk about the adductors, especially the adductor magnus. At the bottom of a squat, those adductors actually start to extend the hip. So if they're really, really tight, what happens is as we get lower and lower into the squat, those adductors shorten and tighten and tighten and tighten, drive those knees in, and when that happens, the duck butt comes out and that butt wing comes through. So what we want to do, again, varying degrees of stretch here. We're going to start with a pretty basic one, pretty easy one, call it the hockey stretch. Get on all fours, sticking one leg out to the side. You're going to be focusing on stretching that adductor. What you want to focus in on, trying to keep your shoulders level to the ground and pushing that hip back. You're going to immediately start to feel, if you're really, really tight, start to feel a massive pull on the inside of that thigh. So I'll do this, I'll kind of rock in and out, hold it for a couple breaths. If this is not as much of a stretch as you need, we develop into the frog position. So what we want to do, feet outside of knees, elbows flat on the ground. Now you're going to be sinking your hips back, and holy cow, this does not feel super, super good. I would go kind of easy on these because they are a little bit of an aggressive stretch. But the fact of the matter is, if those adductors are tight, then you're going to be more prone to having that butt wink earlier and earlier in your squat than you would if they were a little bit more mobile. Oh, that's brutal. Oh, let me shake that out there. So we went over the foot, so we went over the ankle, we went over stretching out the hips from the front, stretching out the adductors, and the last piece that I really want you to focus in on in the fifth step here to help kind of correct that butt wink if you're squatting is to focus on torso tension and core control, right? So one of the biggest issues of that pelvis rocking in a squat is because we're not stabilizing the torso enough. So very simple. If you've seen our Big Three video with Brian Carroll talking about the McGill Big Three, very, very simple, very, very straightforward. The idea is to kind of get the muscles of your torso stabilized and firing so that those muscles can stabilize that pelvis and keep that in a good position as you descend in the squat. So what do? Very simple. Depending on your level of athleticism, you can start with a very simple front plank. For my athletes and my clients, what I do to progress it is I get them to breathe in this position. So now what you're trying to do, get big diaphragmatic breaths. Exhale. You'll really start to feel the muscles of the core engage. And then we switch to a side plank. Same thing. We work the front of the core. Now we're going to work the side. Same idea, feeling all that tension on that oblique. Try to expand that rib cage into that side. Exhale. Then we would do the other side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to grab a kettlebell and do very simple walks. I'll show you those right now. All right, so we worked on our ability to stabilize front to back, side to side, and now with a single arm farmer's walk, what we're doing is we're working our ability to resist motion in a rotational form. So this is like the standing, moving version of a bird dog. It's very important, especially if you're squatting. You need to be able to maintain your position and maintain that good form throughout the whole movement. So at the bottom of a squat, what you may find is that your upper back may round over, or you lose that stiffness in your torso, and which then that force of that squat will be going into all the wrong places. So what we do is, with this warm up, with any of the things I showed you today, what we really want to focus in on is working on a weak point that you need to work on, right? This is not the be all end all for butt wink. This is not how you fix it. Fix butt wink in every single facet or particular situation. But the fact of the matter is, these are tips that may help you based on a weakness you have. And at the end of the day, we're here to help. So guys, if you got anything out of this video, make sure you like it, share it, subscribe, do all the things, put your comments down below. And what we will do is we will read those and send us more ideas for videos, man. Because if you do not tell us what you want to see, we're going to start doing some crazy shit. So guys, if you like it, make sure you like, subscribe, share, do all the things, and we will see you in the next one.